everyone. I'm Katie Rich. I'm the host of the Prestige Junkie podcast. If you love award season or simply want to understand what's going on between now and the Oscars, become a paid subscriber to Prestige Junkie After Party. I'll be bringing in special guests to talk about insights from fall festival season and beyond to help you understand why some of us truly think the Oscars are as important as the Super Bowl. Go to prestigejunkie.afterparty.substack.com and subscribe now.
This is Rob Long with Martini Shot for The Ankler. The bad news, I told a person last week who wanted to know how to break into show business, is that there really isn't a show business anymore to break into. It's all a fantastically chaotic muddle, and the rules and patterns are being constructed right now, brand new, which is also the good news, if you're in your 20s like he is, because chaos and disruption when you're younger are good things. And when you hear people talk about legacy and tradition and history, remember that that is how people talk when they're broke or about to be. What every young person needs to know is that all they really need to do is to take the car keys away from grandpa. I mean, metaphorically, right? But that would be my advice, which I give, but it never really seems to land because people don't like to be told that the key to success in show business is just to try stuff out and risk and desecrate the old temples. They don't like that whether they're Ivy League college kids who dream of getting an 8-episode order from Hulu or billionaires who just bought a studio and now want to buy another one for some reason. Nobody likes to hear that it's a splendid and ungovernable muddle. But people still ask me this question: how did you break in? What was your career path? And even though I say over and over and over again that none of that is relevant to someone trying to do the same thing today, I mean, in the first place, I wanted to be a comedy writer at a time when there were lots of comedies on the air. And the only thing you really needed to know was, are you a 9 o'clock writer or an 8 o'clock writer? And even saying those words now, just hearing them gives you an idea of just how much everything has changed and how absolutely certain we can be that it is never going to change back. But still, people want to know how you did it. So I tell them, mostly, that what they need to do, well, is to buy my book. I mean, either one. I wrote two because they're both kind of the same. And it's all in there, written in the show business equivalent of cuneiform, mutterings and curses and memories from a long time ago. What happens mostly is that the young questioner discovers that they got here too late. They were born too late to take advantage of the golden years, which always seem to have happened just before you got here, and to have ended just as you were arriving, probably in your first car, after driving across the country to, break in. Every golden age of show business ends just as you're heading west somewhere in the desert on the 10. And it has always been this way. I remember running into an agent I knew at a screening. Agents are very affectionate, so at one point he put his hand on my shoulder and then he gave it a squeeze, and I had by that time been in Hollywood long enough to know that next he was going to slip his hand up to my neck and lean in to whisper into my ear. This is weird the first couple of times, and then suddenly it just isn't weird anymore. And he whispered, "So what, you've got a deal somewhere? Studios are making some awfully huge deals these days." "Well, we signed ours 2 years ago," I said, and his face squinched up in agony. "Ooh," he said, "bad timing. You got the uptick, but not the bonanza. Must be killing you." "Well, it's not killing me," I said. "I tell all my clients signing deals this year," he said, "bank the dough, because this will never happen again. It will never happen again. The golden age is over," he said to me many years ago. And then he looked at me searchingly, and I said, "Well, it's not killing me," in a very tiny voice. I thought of that moment a lot for the next, 2 decades, and I think of it a lot now when I try to give career advice to people for whom it's like, stories from the legend of El Dorado. I got the uptick, but not the bonanza. And I used to add, hey, I hope that will never be a suitable title for my autobiography. But honestly, it is. I mean, it's not the best one I've heard, but it captures the moment and the sense that the real moment happened just before you got in the room. And actually, that's sort of a parlor game we play sometimes in the writer's room. Whenever you catch yourself using a phrase you never thought you'd use, you follow it by saying, "My 20 years in Hollywood," like it's the full pompous title of your autobiography, something, 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 : my 20 years in Hollywood. For instance, Once shooting a show that involved dogs, we couldn't find the right kind of female dog, so we decided to use a male dog. And after a long phone conversation with the dog trainer, I hung up and I turned to my colleagues and I said, "We're going to tape up the dog's penis and testicles for the wide shot." And then I added, "My 20 years in Hollywood." It almost always works. Once when we were shooting a scene that required a room full of very large, morbidly obese people, this was at a time when you could do that kind of visual joke many years ago. See Golden Age, end of above. So we needed a room of very fat people. And when we got to the set, we discovered that the AD had hired a lot of merely plump people. "Get me some fatter atmosphere," I said, and then added, "My 20 years in Hollywood." Or we once worked with an actor who was very close to his mother, and behind his back in the writer's room, we used to make, really cruel and raucous fun of that relationship, Norman Bates kind of stuff, her corpse in the fruit cellar, face distorted into a ghastly rictus, him wearing her leathery preserved scalp with tufts of her hair stringing down, fun, normal writer stuff. Then one day, his mother actually died unexpectedly, and he was crushed. He was deeply grieved. He was visibly devastated on the set. And I knew that, the minute the writers were in the room together, they were going to use that material. So I felt the need to make an announcement to the writing staff. No dead mother jokes for the rest of the day. And then I added, almost to myself, "My 20 years in Hollywood." Of course, this works a lot better when you're young, and the idea of spending 20 years working in Hollywood is just ludicrous. It's like terraforming Venus or something. 20 years, good Lord, that's like a lifetime. And then the notion of writing a self-important Hollywood autobiography is equally nuts, which it is, even though I wrote 2 of them and I'm working on a 3rd. Because when you think about it, there are so many possible great titles out there. It'd be a shame if they didn't all get turned into autobiographies, right? Not long ago, after eating a very, very suspicious Caesar salad, I came down with, horrendous food poisoning. I'll just let you imagine what it was. It was horrendous food poisoning, and it lingered for a few days, nearly a week. So I went to the doctor, I got tests, and a few days later I got the call. "Well," my doctor said, "the test confirmed that it was a serious case of foodborne contamination, but if you're feeling better, it's best to let it run its course and for the body to deal with it without medication." "Okay," I said, "I guess I do feel a little bit better, but is there any idea how I got it?" And he didn't even think about the answer. He just said, "Well, it was definitely what we call fecal oral. Almost everything these days is fecal oral." And for some reason I added, "My 20 years in Hollywood." Which is to say that I have a winner. I mean, I know the title of my next show business autobiography, but the question is, what's yours? Because my hope for you, if you're just starting out or on the 10 driving into town, or maybe you've been here for a while and it's all so uncertain and unmoored and terrifying these days that it's impossible to imagine sticking around in show business for another month, let alone another 20 years. But my advice, which you did not ask for, I know, but my advice is to remember that it's always been this way and to trust that you really can be here long enough to write your show business autobiography. You just need a title. And that's it for this week. Next week, we will lose track of the story. For The Ankler, this is Rob Long with Martini Shot.